One of the problems with all of the horrific crises that we are dealing with right now is that smaller things that once upon a time in our youth, smaller crises and scandals that would have been front page news for weeks are like 1 or 2 day wonders. And one of the problems that has come to light recently has been this idea of legislators profiting by either buying or selling stocks after they are given confidential briefings. There was the case very recently where one of the senators, one Senator Richard Burr, is actually being investigated. Another senator who was also accused of selling stock after getting a briefing, Kelly Loeffler. Kelly Loeffler's getting a pass. She's been, the Trump administration has said that they looked into it and she's okay. Interestingly, they made that determination after her husband, Jeff Sprecher, donated $1 million to a PAC that supports Donald Trump. Then all of a sudden, Kelly was no longer in the spotlight. But Richard Burr, who had sometimes, well, you can't really say stand up to Donald Trump because nobody in the Republican Party does, but had been not as loyal as one might wish, is being investigated for this. And one of our own congressmen from Illinois, Krishnamoorthi from the 8th District in Illinois, has decided to push a bill that would actually get rid of this whole potential for scandal going forward, and joins us now to talk about it. Hello, how are you, Raja?
Hey, Joan, how are you?
I'm doing very well. So tell me, was it this recent scandal about the sales made after confidential briefings with Kelly Loeffler et al. That really lit a fire under you to push this ban conflicted trading act?
That and the issue with Richard Burr. I think that you may have talked about this with your audience, but Richard Burr was a party to many classified briefings relating to the pandemic. As the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, he's privy to incredibly confidential insider information that the public doesn't have access to. Well, he used that information, or the allegation is, and there's serious evidence to support it, that, essentially he proceeded to sell off all of the stocks in his portfolio related to the sectors that would be most worstly affected by the pandemic. And so this is the type of behavior that undermines already low trust in Congress. And I decided, you know what, let's just go a step further than anything that we have right now, which is completely ban the ability of members of Congress to engage in the sales of individual stocks. And so I said, if you can't trade, you can't cheat.
Right.
And we can't even have the appearance of cheating. And so that's why I'm pushing this along with Senator Jeff Merkley in the Senate.
And so tell me exactly what is in this Conflicted Trading Act. What would the rules be if it were passed?
There are a few different provisions. One is that, it prohibits the trading of individual shares of stock. It allows us, like everyone else, to invest in diversified mutual funds, or in my case, my wife and I have invested only in index funds. It prohibits people from sitting on corporate boards. Joan, you'll never believe this, but a member of the House can still sit on a corporate board, which I still don't understand. I only discovered this upon entering Congress, and I still can't believe members of Congress are allowed to do this. And then it also does a couple other things. Basically, it makes sure that folks have a period of time to divest themselves of stocks, like 6 months from the time that the act is put in place. and then it allows for folks to basically put all of their investments behind a blind trust or in a blind trust so that they can't control it if they wish not to divest. But the whole wish not to divest their current portfolio. But the point is that you can't buy individual shares of stock or sell individual shares of stock, and that would be a big step in the right direction.
As you point out in the video you released on this, Kelly Loeffler was also, along with Richard Burr, somebody who did a lot of stock selling after that classified briefing. She, of course, said, "Oh, just coincidental. It was just one of those things." And then, of course,
Right.
her husband, who happens to be the head of the Intercontinental Exchange and who's pretty much drowning in money, donated $1 million to a Trump-supporting PAC. And suddenly we hear from Bill Barr's DOJ and the White House, oh, Kelly didn't really do anything wrong. It's that Richard Burr we've got to look into. I mean, the corruption that we're living with right now, I believe, is something that in my lifetime is unprecedented. Not that people in elected office have always been angels. I mean, you and I know how many past governors of Illinois did we end up sending to jail. But this, it just seems staggering to me. And I'm kind of honestly, Raja, shocked that a measure like this isn't already on the books.
Well, that's exactly right. I've mentioned this to some constituents and others, and they basically, responded by saying, this isn't already the law. And I have to kind of proceed to explain to them what's going on. And what's very interesting, Joan, in kind of reading a little bit about the history behind this particular issue, I learned that this was kind of a perk of being in Congress for hundreds of years, not just, now, but in the past. This was thought to be, a way for members of Congress to kind of take advantage of their office. And if that was ever okay in the past, it's not okay now, especially in a time when so many people are hurting economically. Our stock markets are gyrating, incessantly. And quite frankly, we need more trust in our institutions, including Congress.
Absolutely. Do you have any kind of bipartisan support in any depth for this?
I regret to say no, not yet. I'm hopeful, and we're going to continue to push hard. I think that this is one of those things, unfortunately, that, there is some resistance to. And it's resistance that kind of is rooted in tradition and what was appropriate in the past. But, I got to tell you, Joan, when I came into Congress, now it's going to be 4 years ago, basically, my wife and I had a choice, which was either, keep our investments as is or do something different about them in light of the fact that I'd be presiding over different committees, matters, and voting on different things. And we just decided we're just going to liquidate everything and put them into these mutual funds, these index funds. And the primary reason is I just never wanted to be accused of voting on something that would have directly benefited me, or take up a matter that would have benefited me or harmed somebody that for some reason I was in opposition with. For financial gain. And so I think that it's so far so good, at least for me personally. I feel liberated. I feel like I don't have to worry about that stuff when I get the classified briefing on X individual or X company. I'm not going to feel as though, it's time to go buy and sell. It feels a lot better. And I think it also allows me to do, more things that are consistent with what my constituents want.
We have a caller who has a question about what's in your bill. Let's go to Dave from San Francisco. Yeah. Hey, Dave, you wanted to ask about what, currency speculation? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Joan, and your guest. Recently, you remember a week or so ago, Trump tried to quickly fire the Southern District of New York's attorney and replace him with a guy named Clayton. And if I understand right, Clayton is with the Security Exchange Commission. And so I'm wondering whether the legislation, if I understand right, Clayton is very interested in Bitcoin and these cyber currencies, which basically can't be tracked. When you look at cyber currency, how much is it valued at? Are there fake valuations? So if the United States government is supposed to have one valuation, the dollar, and these cyber currencies are being played by an interested party who's in the Security Exchange Commission, Clayton, would your legislation cover the conflict of interest, whether Clayton is betting against his own team, the U.S. dollar?
Raja, does your bill include anything to do with currency speculation?
So this is where we get into.
Thanks, Dave, by the way. Yeah, we're getting in the weeds a little bit.
we're getting in the weeds. I don't want to lose all your listeners at this point, but basically, a member of Congress cannot buy or sell what are called covered investments, and covered investments has a kind of a technical legal term in the government, but it involves individual securities, commodities, futures, corporate bonds, and I suspect it also includes these types of shares of technocurrency. But we can definitely answer that in more detail. If Dave wants to contact us, we'll get on it. My number is 847-413-1959. So if he wants to reach out, we'll get the answer for him.
Okay, 847-413-1959. We'll make sure Dave gets that number. So where does your Ban Conflicted Trading Act stand as of today?
As of today, we're trying to gather more co-sponsors. We have a growing list of co-sponsors, but we want to get more and more so that we can, try to get some action on the floor, or at least in committee first. So if any of your listeners want to reach out to their members of Congress and talk about this Ban Conflicted Trading Act, it'd be great if they want to share the video that you talked about, which is like a 3-minute video. It's a lot of fun. It talks about insider information akin to, knowing what cards are coming when you're playing blackjack. This is really important, and I think that we have to engender and create more trust in Congress.
Yeah. I like your constituents. I'm frankly shocked that this doesn't already exist. And frankly, I'm a little surprised that a measure like this doesn't have bipartisan support, because I know I do a lot of conversations and reporting on the Illinois State House. And of course, ethics and ethics reform has been a real big topic, particularly in the last couple of years. And if anything, I would say Republicans are as much, if not more, on board with ethics reform for the state legislature than even the Democrats. Do you think that there are any Republicans that you can get who really feel like reform is needed and overdue?
Well, as you know, a certain president who happens to be a member of the other party has so many conflicts that kind of fall within this general realm that I think that some folks on the other side are very, they're very hesitant to even talk about financial conflicts of interest. And
it's a sore spot.
It's a sore spot, and I think it really invites the bigger conversation for why they're for this and not against what they see in the executive branch or what we all see in the executive branch. I think that despite that, I think that folks on the other side should sign up for this. It's the right thing to do, and we have to model the values that the constituents and the American public demand of us, which is transparency, which is getting rid of the incentive to use your political office for personal financial gain. I mean, that's just like, I think, Congress 101, and we got to just pass that course now.
Do you think that this bill has a shot when Joe Biden becomes president?
Possibly. I say that only because I also think that in the Senate, Jeff Merkley is going to have more support. He's kind of running into some of the similar issues that I am with regard to the other side. And as you know, in the Senate, it becomes a much bigger issue with Mitch McConnell as the head.
Yeah, we got to get rid of him, too.
So, well, there you go. And I think that unfortunately, he and his family are, they embody conflicts of interest left and right. And that's a separate conversation. But this whole Ban Conflicted Trading Act issue, I think it's going to become more and more salient as people learn about more and more scandals in Congress.
Yeah, and those, I have a feeling, are not going to be a thing of the past. Thank you so much, Raja.
No.
I really appreciate your taking the time to talk about this this act. And anybody who's listening, obviously Raja supports this, but we hit Brad Schneider, we hit Jan Schakowsky's area, we hit northern Indiana, southern Wisconsin. So pick up the phone and call your congressperson. It's called the Ban Conflicted Trading Act, and it's overdue. Thanks, Raja. Thanks for talking with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Joan. Have a nice day.
You too. And we're going to take a real quick break and be back with more after this. I might play that video for you that he was talking about right after this.
There's no excuse to miss Joan Esposito.
It's number one on my stereo.
Live, local, and progressive. You can listen to her daily at WCPT820.com on your computer or phone.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We were just talking with Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, who represents the 8th District in Illinois. And he is right now trying to get sponsors of what's called the Ban Conflicted Trading Act. Right now, senators and congresspeople can go to some of these briefings where they find out about problems that the country might be facing or actions the country might be taking. And a number of them have used that information to buy and sell stock. They have profited off of what is essentially insider information, which is something that you can't do and I can't do. And it doesn't really seem like we should send somebody to Congress so that they can, sell stock based on what they learn in these secret classified briefings. Raja actually made a video, as he said a moment ago. It's like a 3-minute video. It starts with him using blackjack as an example. When do you, if you've ever played blackjack, you've got decisions to make. Do you put another card down? Do you not? And he uses that as a metaphor to explain the bill. We're not going to listen to that part, but after he gives you that example, he talks about the bill, what it's going to do, and why it's necessary. And I do want to share that audio with you now.
When it comes to gambling on the stock market, members of Congress actually have a magical power. It's called inside information. Every day, members of Congress are learning top secret details about our country, and those details affect how our markets move. For instance, if you knew a global pandemic was about to shut down the entire travel industry, it might be a good idea to sell all your stock in hotels. Even corporate insiders don't get the same type of insider information that members of Congress do. And not only can legislators buy and sell stocks based upon confidential information that no one else knows, they can also push through or kill legislation when it's set to benefit or hurt their current investments. So if you're a member of Congress who owns a bunch of stock in fossil fuel companies, would you really vote for clean air laws that hurt your own pocketbook? Even during a time like right now, where Americans are completely paralyzed by this pandemic, some lawmakers continue to make trades, all the while receiving closed-door briefings and confidential insights from national security officials and health experts. In fact, between February 2nd and April 8th of this year, about a 6-week period, 12 senators and 37 House representatives made over 1,480 stock market transactions. Even if all those trades were completely innocent, doesn't it just sound shady? Doesn't this weaken your faith in our elected representatives and in our system of government? So let's put an end to it. The Ban Conflicted Trading Act prevents members and their high-ranking staff from trading, buying, and selling individual stocks. It's quite simple. You can't cheat if you can't trade. Members would have the option of transferring their assets to a blind trust, or they can keep their existing investments as long as they don't trade them while in office. This is just common sense. No one should be able to get rich off public service. Share this video if you think it's time to end insider trading in Congress.
And if you would like to see that video and more of what Raja Krishnamoorthi puts out, his website is krishnamurthy.house.gov.